got tons of pockets. Like I used to put my, let's say, conductor's radio here if I was a conductor, and then when I was an engineer, I'd put a lot of different books, cell phone, and, you know, anything we had. And let's see what we got here. So this one here, I'm going to try to hunt up some stickers. So this one, this will be your starter, but it's plain. Or if you go online and see any type of a railroad sticker, you can put that on there. The guys that work along the tracks, they gave me that to give to you.
Wow.
So you can actually get your name and put it on there and stuff, really personalize it, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, let's see what else we got. Alright.
Oh, you look pretty good in the hat.
So, a lot of the stuff here, like this picture I really liked, just because I know you're younger. And this was a popular toy as a kid. But I'm into hot rods too, so they hot rodded this thing, but they put it on a set of railroad tracks. Isn't that cool?
Oh, wow.
Cool.
So you can have that picture for your room. And some of this stuff is
All this stuff's for you to put in your room and stuff. That's how short.
some of this stuff might be a little bit advanced, but when you get older and you keep reading on stuff, if you ever want to become, you know, an engineer or conductor, there's a lot of information on it. There's that book. Let's see what we got. Take a look here. That's pretty cool too on the front. It's got train on there. There's different unions for the railroad. So this one here came from the UTU, and that's what it stands for, United Transportation Union. There's also the BLET, Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. That's the one I belong to. But it's for maintenance way employees and remote control operators. So some guys run a train now with a remote control belt pack. There's not even an engineer on the train in the yard. So it's pretty neat. Yard master position too. So have you ever seen like a tower in an airport?
Yeah.
They have the same thing at the railroad. So they'll be way up in the tower, and that's a hump down there. And I'll show you a map that I brought to you of that. And then we do hand signals and things. And just there's a lot of neat information in there. So about conductors right there. But just general stuff.
Southern Pacific.
Yeah, some of this stuff, like I said, I don't need it, but it might be worth money when you get older, like far away from now, but that's just like a constitution. Anything railroad related or transportation, don't ever throw it away, you always hold on to it.
Right.
It's gonna be worth money.
It's all
Yep.
become more valuable.
And then this is just an older book, so, and I don't have anything written in it, which is good. But we would have to keep track of every trip we did. And, you know, if I were you, I probably wouldn't fill it out, but you can. Because anything that doesn't have any writing in it, it'll be worth more money. But, so this is back in 2004. But here's like different things, you know, the day I worked, what job was I on? What was the locomotive number? What time did I start work? What time did I end work, my off-duty time? What else I got in here? Class of service, I could have been a conductor, an engineer. How much did they pay me for the room and meals? Because I would take trains out of state to Chicago, Cleveland, Ohio, Bellevue, Ohio, Peru, Indiana, Grand Rapids, Michigan. So they would put us in hotels. So they give us a meal allowance. And how much straight time did I get? How many miles did I go? This is all every time I had to log it, just like a truck driver. So that's, you know, it's just something to keep.
So they, if you went to a different town, they put you up, but you would then take a train back.
Yeah, I would be on call then in a hotel room,
And then,
and I've sat up there over 30 hours sometimes. waiting.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
This book you'll like a lot. So this is even older because it's now Norfolk Southern, but before Norfolk Southern it was Conrail. And those guys are real proud of Conrail. We call them old heads, so people that's been there forever. But like Conrail really took care of the people. The locomotives are actually blue. But this is going to be neat. This is where you're going to learn your signals. So you see those lights along the tracks.
Yeah.
Yep.
The red, yellow,
And
green,
it tells you what every signal is. So
Wow, that's cool.
these here are called a position signal, just because, you know, it's actually going in a direction. Well, these here are different. This is more of an aspect symbol. And then so to tell you like what those mean, and then there should be a place in here too where it says what the definition of each one is. That's a real cool thing
Wow,
to learn.
That's cool.
Some of the tests. So when I went to conductor, hired as a conductor, they sent me to Georgia for two weeks for training, and then they sent me back to Elkhart for a month. and I started training with people, and then they sent me back down there for another 2 weeks, and then I came back and trained for like 6 months. So it's a lot to learn. It's not something, you know, like cutting grass, so, you know, here's how you do it, start it. It's a dangerous job, but it's a lot. It's very rewarding when you're done.
Yeah.
What else I got in here? I just grabbed a stack, so some of the stuff might not pertain to you, but like this, I mean, I would still keep it. This is like my health and welfare plan. Anything that's got railroad on it is worth money, so I just hold on to all that stuff. Same thing with that's just dental, but anything, I always keep it. Because I got a guy one of my best friends, he works for an auction house, and there's where it come to me at, where I used to live, but he buys everything. Yeah, I have to get rid of, you know, anything like all. It's another union thing here, but there's the history of the actual, the union and American labor movement. So there's a little bit of history in there for the railroad. That's kind of neat. Be some good reading.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
And there's a couple pictures there, yardmaster department, and so it looks like the railroad and the bus are a little bit similar. But I've seen it a couple times repeated. Yeah, anything like that. There's a conductor holding a lantern. And that's something I'm gonna get my hands on. I'm gonna get you your own lantern too, with a battery. And it's pretty cool. We'll go over some signals and stuff next time I see you. So this is all the rules and rates of pay. And just if you ever wanna know what a rule is, or why does this guy do this for? And it's a pretty cool picture of that locomotive there. I've actually ran that number before. So after a while, you start seeing them. I mean, we actually borrow other people's locomotives too, and they borrow ours. So just because you see let's say a Burlington Northern Santa Fe train or a locomotive going through Knox, that line is actually that's Norfolk Southern's line. So we would use theirs, they'll use ours.
So like BNSF and Union Pacific too?
Anything, yep. It just depends what line they're on. But
And they call that foreign power, right? When it's not.
Yeah.
So like Canadian National will be like run through power?
Sometimes, yep.
We just happened to be at the Norfolk Southern line in LaPorte last week, and there's Canadian National train on it.
Yeah.
And
It's the Norfolk Southern guys for the most part. There's some CN guys, and because the CN put a temporary, like kind of like a construction trailer. It's you know, they're portable. They set them up in Elkhart, so it could have been a Canadian National because they actually did put a little trailer up there. There's all kinds of stuff in here. So you wouldn't really have to worry about so much to pay, but you know, let's say you're running a train from Bellevue, Ohio to Peru, and it tells you actually how many miles are between each place too. It's kind of cool. There's just a ton of information. Yeah.
it's always nice to know.
We were in Peru.
Trying to get a film of a train, we never could get one there.
Oh no.
We were in Peru, like we were stopping by places on our way to Ohio.
So let's see what we got here. I got a couple friends that pitched in and wanted to give you some stuff. So this is the drive down summer spike. So the spikes are, of course, what hold the plate on, you know, and the tracks onto the railroad tie. So this is from 2019. So this is already collected money for you. But that's pretty cool. And then it's got the Norfolk Southern horse logo on there and the American flag. So you can wear it and put it up. Got the locomotive up there.
We have a railroad spike somewhere in the house.
Yeah, I could definitely get some more of those. Let's see, so this, if you were to have a handheld radio, like this is what you'd put on your belt, and then just take that off, and then it goes in there, sticks out, and then your antenna comes up. So that's something to wear on your belt if you want.
For the scanner.
Yep. And then, looks like they also give you a reflective belt, and that's might be a little bit big for you. That's all right. You can probably shorten her up and make it fit, but that's kind of cool too. Or to sleep like that, you know, as a collector. See what else they gave here for you.
Man, come away with all kinds of stuff, just kidding.
Must be some Norfolk Southern glasses. So put those with that stuff. Looks like they gave you a set of Norfolk Southern reflective gloves.
Stripes on it.
So all this stuff we gotta wear, it's got the bright colors on there, so
Girl
let's
wants
see
to
us.
put it on for she can see in them.
Oh yeah.
That's cool.
And they gave you a reflective vest too. And I know it's gonna be way too big, but that's okay.
Big deal.
Yep. And the good thing about that is this one is Canadian Pacific.
Oh, wow.
How about that?
Wow.
And instead of that thing being on your belt, some guys would carry their radios up here. Just so when they talk, they just hit the button and their mouth is right by it. It's pretty convenient.
We seen a guy at
That's yours.
Hiles that did that. He had it right there, and he's be talking
Yeah.
into his chest
It's
like.
easy to hear too.
Yeah.
I don't hear very good, so when they're down here on the your belt loop. So yeah, and then this bag is yours too. So
Wow.
uh-oh, what's this, man? Ooh, look at that.
Wow.
Wow.
Check it out.
That's it. Right.
10 years of service.
How about that? Pretty cool, huh?
Is that yours?
Not mine.
We appreciate you having all them good friends that do that.
And then there's a cool keychain too for your house key or whatever, or your Corvette out in the garage.
You got a vet in the car, man. You gotta start paying for your own snacks when we go out. We're here with Pete Bradley, and he was an engineer from Norfolk Southern, and he's talking to Emmett on Emmett's rails, and he wanted to ask him some questions. So go for it, kid.
Which railroad did you work for and how long were you there?
I worked for Norfolk Southern Railroad. That used to be Conrail out of Elkhart, Indiana. I was there for right around 15 years. Yeah.
Interesting. What were all the positions you worked while there?
I hired out as a conductor, and I did that for 8 years, and then it's a mandatory promotion to become an engineer. So you can't say, no, I like being a conductor. And it was very stressful. I went down to school, and that was a month long to be an engineer. And at the end of your four weeks of training, you had 4 tests you had to take. So there was a mechanical, a book of rules, a simulator test, and then a signal test. So the signals test, you had to get 100%. You couldn't miss one question. And then the other 3, you had to have 80%. And if you didn't pass, you come back home and try to study for some of those and then go back down and retest. And then if you didn't pass any of those that you failed the second time, they let you go. You lose your job. You don't go back as a conductor. So needless to say, I studied for once in my life, and I passed it the first time.
Was that in Atlanta?
That was in McDonough. Yeah, down in Georgia. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Was it a stressful job?
Very. The most stressful job I've ever had. They tell you some stories down there that I won't get into, but they're pretty graphic of accidents that's happened or things like that. And I've also lost some friends that I worked with. Unfortunately, might have lost a leg or been ran over by a train. So it's very dangerous. And if you've ever been in a vehicle or even looked outside and it's so foggy, you can't hardly see in front of your face, and then have to run a train at 60 miles an hour through that, and the snow and the rain. And I also had to know where every road crossing was through all of that. So like from Elkhart to Cleveland, seems like there was around 212 road crossings, give or take. So, and I had everything had to be just right going over those road crossings, because let's say I didn't blow my horn soon enough for the road crossing, or I didn't have my bell on, I didn't have my lights on, and if I hit somebody and injured them or killed them, then I could actually go to jail for manslaughter. So it's a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm.
Did you have any good times?
I had a lot of good times. The brothers that I became friends with up there, and just the whole unions. You know, you work side by side with somebody, and you're in a small little area of a locomotive. Sometimes we've been on a train for 24 hours, stuck in a snowstorm, because they can't get a taxi cab to us. So you run out of food, your cell phone dies, and you have nothing to do but talk to each other. So you get to know one another pretty good. Yep.
Did you have a favorite engine, or did they all operate the same?
I actually liked running some of the old Conrail engines, and just any of the older models before they started updating everything. So now a lot of those they're automated, as far as, you know, some of them start blowing a horn for you instead, and they'll actually accelerate and decelerate, because it actually shows a graph. So it can be controlled by a machine at some point, but you also have to manually do it, but they used to call it running a train by the seat of your pants, by feel, and I was blessed to be trained that way. So if any of that stuff that the new updated technology isn't working, I still know how to do the job the old-fashioned way. So yeah.
Just out of curiosity, when we got talking about all the crossings, you know, LaPorte's talking about maybe going to a no horn zone.
Mhm.
Do you, in your experience, do you think that's a good idea?
I actually wish they'd have it in Knox, just because the road crossings are so close together, and some of the guys, I mean, they just lay on the horn. I mean, they're just trying to tell everybody they're coming. But I ran on a no blow zone. They're through a part of Elkhart South Bend area, and all you do is have your bell on, you get your lights on, and all those places have gates.
Mhm.
So, you know, all those people should, you know, be able to follow those rules and not go around the gate, because if they still get hit, they're still doing something wrong.
Right.
And it's just so much quieter. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
I didn't mean to take away from his questions.
Oh, no.
It just, when you said about the crossings, I was
Yeah.
wondering about that.
What was your least favorite part of working for the railroad?
Being on call. Absolutely. It was, so let's say that I'm on a list, and then if the phone rings, I have to go to work. I had to be in Elkhart in 2 hours from Knox. And it took just a hair over an hour to get there before they put that new 31 in, so I had to have my lunch packed at all times. I might have been at my son's basketball game, wrestling meet, I might have been at my daughter's track meet. I've been called out on Christmas, holidays, birthdays. I missed out on so much stuff with my kids. It was very, very hard to be away from those guys. So that, and I would say with that tied would be being away, being gone all the time. You know, that would be take a train from Elkhart to Chicago. Sometimes I would take, 12, 14, 16 hours to get to the hotel. Then I might be in a hotel for 20 some hours and then take a train back and have a long day. So I'd be gone usually 2 to 3 days every time. And sometimes be called right back out.
That'd be tough.
Mm-hmm.
What was your favorite part?
Mm-hmm. I would say just the pride I had in telling people what I did for a living. I took a lot of pride in learning that job, and it was something I never thought I could actually do. I actually doubted myself, and to actually go out there and do it, and then still to this day when I see a train go by, and you can feel the ground shake, blocks away, and the power that thing has. And sometimes my trains would be 2.5 miles long and 20,000 tons, and to be able to make that thing go and make that thing stop. There's no steering wheel obviously, but going up a hill, down a hill. There's actually one time, and I should have brought a picture of it. I was with a brand new conductor. It was his first trip, so we took a train to Chicago and then we brought one back. And we're coming through South Bend there by the South Bend Silverhawk Stadium, coming around a curve, and luckily there was a speed restriction, so I had to slow down to 25 miles an hour. And it's nighttime. As soon as I came around that curve, I'm kind of looking. I was like, I think there's a vehicle on the tracks. And my conductor says, he goes, I don't see what you're talking about. So I told him, I said, yeah, there is. So I put all the brakes on, and he has a lever on his side. It's called his emergency brake. And he's like, should I dump the air? Which what that does is it releases all the air and sets up all the brakes at the same time. But then you have a chance of derailing the train. So if we're doing everything correctly, I would rather do my job correctly, and if I hit a car, I'm hoping they're all out of there, than versus taking out part of a town. So I told them, I said, don't you dare touch that handle, and I did everything they taught me in school. And you could hear the wheels just squealing really loud, and he's like, you think you're gonna stop? I said, I don't know. I put every bit of air on I could, and once you put all them brake shoes on, I put them on the locomotives and the cars at the same time, they start warming up, and when they warm up, they actually grab better. So slowly we started grabbing better and better, and then I would say I was 1 to 2 car lengths away from hitting that car, and I got it stopped.
Oh, wow.
So what had happened was they'd taken out the the road between the tracks where people cross, and there was a blockade on each side. So they fixed half of the track, so it's all asphalted, but the other part wasn't done yet. So some teenagers went around, and they thought it was fixed, and when they did, they sunk where the track came, or it wasn't fixed yet. So it was a Jeep Cherokee, and when I got stopped, I saw some kids standing on the side of the tracks with the police. They were already there. I got stopped, and I put my window open. That cop said, "You see, you just saved me a lot of paperwork." He said, "How did you get that thing stopped?" I said, "I just did what they told me in school, you know." And then I looked over at this brand new conductor. Now he's white as a ghost. And I said, "You still want a railroad, kid?" And he said, "I'm gonna have to go home and give this some serious thought." And he never came back. It scared him that much. So, you know, that was probably the most terrifying thing that ever happened. Yeah, scary.
I didn't realize you could derail a train by
Sometimes, yeah.
Wow, that's interesting to know.
And then too, another interesting thing is they taught me. So let's say that there's a truck that's stranded on the tracks, and you get close to it and you see that it's hauling explosives, like some type of a liquid. They actually tell you to accelerate versus if you're not going to get stopped, because if you hit it and it explodes, you'd rather hurry up and get through it than have your brakes already set, and then now when it blows up, you're right into it. So there's things I never thought of before, you know. What else you got for me?
How hard is it to stop a loaded train if you see something on the track?
Well, we've kind of discovered it a little bit, and there's several things to think about. How heavy is my train? Like I said, sometimes I would haul loaded coal from downtown Chicago, and then am I going uphill? Am I going downhill? Is the rail wet? Is there leaves on the tracks? And everything like that, it all factors into, you know, because people ask me, how long does it take to stop a train? And there's just several answers. It really depends on the scenario, but they teach you all that in school. So if it's something that you really want to do when you get older and passionate, they're going to give you the training down there, and then they're actually going to put you with a lot of guys that know what they're doing. So, you know, if it's something you want to do, definitely, you know, I would seek out checking it out. You know.
Were you ever involved with an accident or derailment?
Both. So the first time it happened, I was in Grand Rapids, and we were putting together a train. And then when we pulled out, there was a guy that does like a roll-by inspection. So he's got a radio, and he told me, he's like, if you want, just go ahead and get on the head end, and I'll check everything out. So we're pulling, and all of a sudden we come to a stop, and my engineer, just by being there for so long, he's like, that didn't feel too good. I'm like, what do you mean? You think we're on the ground? He's like, might be. And he couldn't get his air to return, because there's instead of a caboose now, a lot of times they have a little box on the back with a light. And what that does is it transmits back and forth from the front end to the rear end, you know, how much air is between your train. And so we got a call, and the guy says, yeah, you guys looks like you're on the ground. So I'm like, oh, I was scared to death. You know, was it something that I did wrong? Because sometimes if you're putting together a train and you pull out of one track and then you back into another, and you don't throw the switch right, or it's against you, it can actually go through there and lift up and then pop on the tracks. But what had happened was, they call it the rail had gapped. So there might not have been a lot of spikes, the ties might have been getting wore out. So the rail is kind of just rolled out a little bit, enough for the wheels to go on the ground. So, and another time, there was at Burns Harbor, there was a train we were putting away, and we derailed. And another switch was picked, which sometimes happens, and I think we had 4 or 5 on the ground then. So, and it's just nerve-wracking, because there's a lot of people that show up, you know, and they all drive white vehicles, so it's a lot of pressure on me, because I'm the only one back there answering all these questions, and they do an investigation, and it's almost like you know, like a crime or whatever. They cover all bases. Was it your fault? You know, was there something defective? If it was, well, let's fix it. Because now there's these cars that are damaged. They have to repair the tracks. It costs a lot of money when it happens.
Plus the damage inside the cars, whatever is
Yep, and then I was told too that, whether it's true or not, I've followed trains with nothing but brand new automobiles, 3 stacks high, 9 to 12 cars in each car. And they said if even one rail car derails, they scrap the entire train
Really? Wow.
because, of the liability. So whether that's true or not, that'd be something to maybe do more research, but it's pretty crazy to
But
think
even
about.
one car with 12 cars in it, it's pretty expensive.
Yeah, it is.
Would you ever go back to work at the railroad?
I missed the guys, and I missed, like I said, the pride of doing that job. It was great when people asked me what I did for a living. It wasn't working at a grocery store or here or there, and there's nothing wrong with those. It's just the job's been around forever. It's got a lot of history, and my dad actually, I've met a couple guys now that. And I didn't know this till about 6 or 7 years ago. I was at a bluegrass little get together, and this guy come up and he said, is your dad Pete Bradley? I'm like, yeah. He said, well, we used to ride the rails all over the country. So they used to get on top of the cars and they would take each other's belts, tie it themselves together, and then tie themselves to the rail car, and they would sleep up on top of the cars and travel the United States like that. So, pretty crazy. But I don't know if I'd want to be away from kids and family again and being on call, because it's very hard on your body. I didn't know when to sleep, how much lunch should I pack, how long am I going to be gone. I couldn't make any plans, so I actually lost a lot of friends because they thought I was blowing them off, and in fact I was actually working a lot. So.
It's not really about a shift, it's by the distance, right? I mean, you don't got a day shift job there. You can be gone for 2 days in a row.
And there's actually different jobs where you can actually work in Elkhart Yard or Burns Harbor, and so you'll actually have a shift. So you'll go and start, and work your 8 hours or 10 hours. You might need to stay over, come in early. But I like being on the road. I like seeing stuff, and you see everything out there. Some good things, some bad things. So yeah, I would say that's kind of a up in the air question there, but the money was really good, and the retirement is really good as well.
Do you enjoy watching trains go by on the track today?
Absolutely, yep. I can hear, if I'm talking to somebody or anything's going on important, a parade, I might be watching a Super Bowl, as soon as I hear that horn, you're programmed to, that's dangerous, that's the first thing they teach you, and to always keep a lookout, and they always trained you as a conductor to give yourself a way out. If you're in there, you don't want to be trapped between 2 cars, because it's not good. It's happened before, so dangerous job, but a lot of rewards with it.
Do you have any stories you can share with us about your time at the railroad?
Let's see, a lot of stories, I'm sure. I think some of the coolest things I've ever hauled on the rail. Have you ever been towards Lafayette, and they've got these big, huge windmills? These things are everywhere. We'd actually haul those long blades, and they were so long, I believe they took up 2, maybe 3 car lengths. I've hauled a train with nothing but brand new combines, John Deere or Case, and you think of the money that's involved in that, and they actually call those a high and wide train. It's so wide in some parts of my trip, we would either have to stop, or another train would have to stop, or we would have to adjust our speed, so we wouldn't scrape sides or hit one another. So, and there was actually a spot, it was up there by Gary, Indiana, and it kind of widened, the tracks kind of come away from each other and come back, and they called it the wide spot. So a lot of times we would sit in there for a while, and they would let all the high priority trains go, and they would give us a big window, and then they would run us out. So I've hauled FEMA trailers when they had some bad weather down south, so people could have temporary homes. I did haul Barn and Bailey Circus, and I do have some pictures of that, so when I find those, I will bring those to you as well. That was pretty neat, because I was looking at the paperwork, and it says, conductor, please notify circus train master. I'm like, is this a joke? And my engineer's like, oh no, we got the circus train today. I'm like, the circus? He's like, yeah. So we climbed on board, and I just saw the Barnum Bailey stuff on the side of the cars. But the cool thing was we're coming through LaPorte and around a curve. You always kind of want to look back anytime there's a curve, just as, I don't see my wheels aren't sparking. I don't see anything glowing. Nothing's hanging off the side of my car. But with the circus train, I looked back and there was people shoveling hay off, and I'd see an elephant trunk coming out of the side. And there's actually a couple spots. One's in Elkhart and one's up in Chicago, where they would stop the train in like an area, and they would actually let the animals out for a little bit so they can move around and stuff, and they would load them back up and go again.
That's pretty cool.
So yeah, just a lot of cool things. Military vehicles, Hummers, tanks, things like that I hauled, and that was pretty neat too. Yeah. So
It's surprising, and you can probably let me know if I'm wrong. This in the 1800s, or when the tracks are almost the same as identical as they are now, right? I mean, 4 foot, whatever they are, 4 foot.
Right.
Because I was telling Emmett, we was watching Old Western, we seen that. So that right there in the late 1800s is the same kind of tracks they run on now.
yeah, probably the same width and everything.
Yeah.
It's just
Just
everything.
It's amazing.
Yeah, just like vehicles or your bicycle or anything, everything gets for the most part improved. But there's some, a lot of people are afraid of change, or they're stuck in their ways. So you just have to learn to accept how things are, because they're not going to change, and you just keep learning and learning. And it was just a neat experience to say I did that. And anytime you talk and you say anybody in the room hears that you work for the railroad, there's usually somebody there that likes the railroad, and then it's a good conversation.
We since we've been doing a lot of filming down by some of the tracks, we met some other younger teenagers. They're just so deep into that. They knew what number the train was coming through. We're not knowledgeable enough on that yet, but we thought it was pretty cool. They said, hey, such and such is coming through here in an hour or from now, and where they get their information, I'm not really sure, but they would be sit there with videos, and they're in their teens. And,
I'm sure there's like either a Facebook page or some type of a group, maybe even a group text, and some of them I think have the radios where they can match like the radios that we're using, and they'll keep track, or just where they're parked at. Hey, such and such just went past Peru, Indiana, and they can probably time it when it's going to be the next town. So there's a lot. We call them rail buffs. So people that really are into the railroad. Some of those people knew more about what type of locomotive it was and what series it was than I did. I didn't care if it was black or purple. I just knew how to run the thing and get it from point A to point B safely. So
we just picked up a scanner back a handful of months ago, and so we went online and got some of the frequencies that you could get online, and it was it's amazing. We hear some static, and then 8 miles out, maybe the train's 8 miles out, and that has really saved us a lot of time trying to film the trains. But we just think it's cool that it's kind of open air. You can hear some of the things going on. We hear the and detectors go off. If it's and I forget what the lingo they use on the scan. Well, it's probably the detector
it's
itself.
usually a lot of times it's usually a dragging detector. So they'll use that for, let's say I have like the air goes through like a pipe. And sometimes those clamps will bust loose, or the nuts will come out and things. Then it starts dragging the ground, and that thing, it's like a diamond shaped. And when it hits it, knocks it down, then that sets it off. And it actually can tell you. It'll say, they'll say, hey, let's say 37J, you got hit by the lighted detector. Let me know when your conductor's ready to copy. He responds back, and they'll say, okay, and it's an automated thing too that'll come on. It'll say, 37J, tell you how many, basically how many sets of wheels back that hit, and then they give us a clicker, and I've got one I got to find at the house. Almost like when somebody comes in to, let's say, a big event, and they're keeping track of how many people. I have one of those too, so I can walk and click each wheel, and I'll look down, and a lot of times I can either check by feel, so I'll find that where I got hit, and I'll look underneath, and if it's not that, sometimes it's something that's hot. So it also has on there temperature. So sometimes there might be a brake shoe that's stuck onto the wheel, and it heats up, and if you ever go around one of those, I just put my hand out just a little bit and you can already feel it. And I actually give you a template stick, and it looks like a big crayon, but with harder material. And if you put it on there and it melts, and you put it on the wheel, it's definitely hot. So sometimes if that happens, you can look and make a couple of adjustments on a valve on the rail car, and that will help release it. Or there's times where they'll say, okay, you guys, we're gonna set that car out, to be repaired. But the dragger, there was a time I got hit by a dragging detector, and I was coming through just by the Skyway Bridge in Chicago. So I stopped, and it was a long train. I walked the whole thing with the lantern, and I started hearing music. I'm like, where's it coming from? Chicago's at nighttime can be a little intimidating. So I'm looking around, and on my very last car, there were about 5 Mexicans like in there sitting. So I was like, hey, I said, you guys can't be on here. And then I found the problem, and I didn't have anything to help make that stay up there. So I took the belt off my pants, and I used that, and I strapped it up, and it held it all the way from Chicago to Elkhart. And when I stopped, I said, hey, I need a ride back when the other crew gets on so I can get my belt. So, whatever it takes to make the train get there on time and as quickly as possible and safely, that's what they want.
And if the detector goes off, then you gotta stop the train, right?
Yeah, as long as it's it's something where it reads like the temperature in my read, and it's not too hot, but if you get hit again, then definitely stop. There's also an impact detector, and that's over by IN Tech. They're in Carlisle, and it's actually like concrete pads. And what it does is it checks for flat spots on your train. Have you ever heard a train go by and do?
Yeah.
Yep, that's a flat spot. So if you get one of those and it's too bad, and they train you, how wide it can be and stuff, you may have to set that car out as well.
But we've heard that filming sometimes, we'd be next, we didn't know what it was, and now we do. And I was kind of curious. And, but we always hear on the scanner, the detectors know whatever they say. You know that better than I do. What are they always saying?
Yeah, it's always like saying Norfolk Southern milepost and then all that kind of stuff.
And then detector found, no whatever they.
No
defects.
Yeah, no defects.
And then it
That's
says how many axles there are.
Yeah, yep. Gives it a lot of information. So, it's crazy because when I first started training with these guys, and like we're all talking, and they're telling me stuff about the railroad or maybe how their son did in a baseball game, and so we're all talking, and they would do it on purpose. I think they said, "Did you just hear that?" I'm like, "Hear what?" They're like, "You got to start listening for that stuff. Our detector just went off. Did you hear what it said?" No. So after a while, though, I started to learn. I could listen to that stuff, but as soon as something, came on, like I immediately shut everything off but that. So it takes a while, and then of course getting used to people talking to you on a handheld radio. Sometimes it sounds like gargled, like language. You can't hardly understand it, and I'm like, what do they say? It took forever to figure it out, but after a while, you start learning what they're saying. Sometimes you can tell by a voice who's that person is. So it was just a very unique job. I would say the most interesting one I ever did. And I got to travel, and I got to be outside sometimes, so that was nice.
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
I see those wheels that you turn on the back of each rail car.
Mm-hmm.
What are those things? What are they used for?
That's for the brakes. So if you look on that wheel when they're cranking it, there's actually a chain. So, and then there's like a wheel on the bottom. So what they'll do is they'll turn it to the right to crank the brake on. And what that does is it puts the brakes on the wheel, and now it won't roll. So there's been times where I've actually had a locomotive like blow its motor or like quit working. I've had a locomotive catch fire. And so if I'm up on a good hill, like coming, let's say from Chesterton up to Pinola, that's a pretty good grade for us, the biggest one we had on the west side. And if it does that, sometimes my train will stall. I don't have enough power to get to and you can hear the wheels squealing, you get slower and slower. And so we stop, and he sets up all the brakes, and then I've got to go back and make sure everything's tied down. I put like a lot more brakes on because of the grade, but yeah, there's a lot of things I learned, so much to learn, and there was still a lot that I could have learned. So you'll never stop learning on that job. There's always something to learn.
Just on the side of the track, we've learned some, but we don't see nothing like you guys, of course, working on the trains do, but we catch bits and pieces on different things, but we think, wow, this would be so much information you need to know to get from one city to the other, like the lights and I'm sure you know how fast you could go and this and that, but we go and we see the lights, it's flashing yellow and green, and we know, okay, we're gonna, but I can't imagine, taking a train and you gotta, I mean, you got probably blocks to blocks, you get lights or something like that, and.
It depends too. There's signal territory and then there's dark territory. So you actually dark territory. You actually get permission from the dispatcher to run on a section of rail, with no signals. So I prefer the signals, and those things always are telling me what's going on, or if there's something is happening in front of me, or we're following another train, like several trains. It could be slow. And then all of a sudden I get a restricting signal, so that's telling me that something is on the tracks between that signal in front of me and the next signal. So those signals are really very, very important to go by. I think that's something you might want to do when you get older, or just
No.
something you like doing? No? What do you want to be when you get older?
I don't know yet.
Don't know yet? I didn't either. Yeah.
Something I would have liked to have done when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I was always been interested in trains since I've been really young. But
Yeah.
but then again, wife and 3 kids is like, okay, and you hear the amount of hours you have to put in, and so cutting down the way at a factory isn't altogether bad. I got set hours, but man, I used to love just watching the trains, and we go to the South Shore once in a while, and their train yard's a small train yard.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool watching some of that stuff they do there. And that's only a small one. We drove by Elkhart one time, but it's like, wow, man, it's just amazing to see 80 tracks or whatever it is, the trains.
We had 72 in Elkhart.
72.
And I'm gonna have to go home and do some more digging. I actually have a complete, it folds out, it's a big map of the Elkhart yard, and that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
Different class tracks, and I never knew what a hump was, so they push the cars with the pushers up the hill, and there's a guy on top of the hill, and he pulls the pin. Let's say that these 3 cars are going to Dayton, Ohio. These 3 are going to California, and there's a switch tender up there in the hump, and he just keeps throwing switches. And the first time I saw a car rolling by itself with nothing attached, I was like, hey,
That's something
like,
wrong.
oh.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that track where it's going into, they have 1 or 2 cars that's actually sitting there with the brake on, and so when it hits it, it won't go any farther. I've seen cars that's ran out past those. I've seen where a train has hit a train. I actually hit a vehicle one time up by Whiting. We were only doing 8 miles an hour. We were coming off of the Indiana Harbor rail and coming onto ours, and it's at a place called Dickey Road, which is one of the busiest roads ever because it's steel mill, the BP plant, the rail yard is a lot of big companies up there, and so the tracks are here. There's a stoplight here, and that road's notorious. They all try to get around because they're coming. We have to go 10 mile an hour around that curve before we clear, and we can pick up speed. So we saw cars that were starting to stack up, and then this one went around and stopped right on our tracks. And then slowly he inches up out of the way, but here comes a brand new full-size pickup truck like mine, and he stopped right on the tracks. And you can see him trying to inch, and there's nowhere else to go because the light's still red. And so my engineer says, I think we're going to hit him. Like, oh, they always get out of the way at the last minute. No, I think we're going to hit him. He'll move. They always do. And sure enough, we hit him by 8 mile an hour, and it took the bed of his truck and kicked it completely sideways. And so my engineer had been there over 20 some years and had never hit a vehicle. And so once we got stopped, he stood up and he's like this. I was like, it's okay. I said, we didn't do nothing wrong. I said, let me get my stuff on. I'm going to go check on the guy, make sure he's okay. And he said, don't bother. He drove off. What? I said, yeah, he drove off. His bed's hanging off his truck sideways. Like, okay, well, we called it in, and then actually the police had already stopped him because the cop said, "Man, I thought you guys were really blowing your horn excessively, like more than usual." He said once that light turned, the cars start going by, and he said then there was a big gap with no vehicles, and all of a sudden this truck come by me rearranged. So she says, "I got him stopped." So we brought him back to us, and the guy said, the gates weren't coming down all the way down yet. I didn't do anything wrong, and all I had to say was, "Why did you drive off?" And that was the end of the conversation. Yeah. So we were in the right. We didn't lose our jobs. We didn't, we weren't off work for any amount of time. But talking about sacrifice, and I actually missed my daughter being born because I was in school in Georgia. She came 2 weeks early. So yeah, when he said, "What's the worst thing about the job?" I got a little choked up when I said, I missed out on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then my mom, she used to bring my son up here to LaPorte, and back then we could use our cell phones, and while the train was moving along, and now that's a no-no. You shut them off at all times when it's moving. But so I gave her a heads up. I said, "I'll be coming through LaPorte, pretty soon, about an hour or whatever." They drove up and got by the depot up here. But every time I used to throw them a little bag of candy. And this is my weekend. I'm supposed to have my son. Here I am going to Chicago, so I'm pretty much that's gone. So the last time I did it, I threw him a bag of candy, and he just started bawling. Said, "I love you, Dad," and started crying. And I was like, it was terrible. And so the guys working with said, "I'm so sorry you had to go through that." I was like, "It's rough."
Yeah.
I told my mom, I said, "Don't ever bring him up here again." I said, "I can't take none of that." Yeah, it was difficult.
That would be rough.